Hi everyone, this is Dr. Mike, host of the free iTunes podcast, Psychiatric Secrets Revealed with Dr. Mike, but that's not why I'm here today. This is another Saving Savvy episode, and in this one I'm going to review the Irulu Spiritbook. So this is a little low-powered computer running Windows 10. So normally I would recommend getting a Chromebook, but there are some cases where you really want that Windows operating system. Perhaps you want to run a full-featured word processor and not be connected to the internet. Well, these computers have the ability to do that. Or I've also found that sometimes even web-based software, especially if it's kind of proprietary or special software, might prefer interacting with a computer on Windows compared to something else. So there are times that you may want one of these Windows little netbook kind of computers, and so we're going to talk about this one in particular. Now, I did buy this in November, but I'm just getting around to reviewing it now in March. So that's just sort of the way it is. And you may not find this stream book or this Spirit book, it's the S12, but you might find a similar product from Irulu. So the dimensions of this are very similar to a lot of other Chromebooks and little low-power Windows computers. Weight is a little bit over 2 pounds, not bad at all. Build quality is pretty cheap, but adequate. And you see you have the usual stuff on the inside. So how does this perform? Well, this is using an Atom Cherry Trail quad-core processor. So a pretty low-powered processor with 4 gigabytes of memory and a 32 gigabyte solid-state memory internally. It's not really an SSD. It's slower than that. But that's kind of the standard configuration for a lot of these computers. And when you're running Windows, you get about roughly 10 gigabytes of free space where you could load, for instance, an Office suite or some other not very intensive program on it. And as far as the performance of this computer, the Irulu, it's very similar to other computers that I've used that have also been running Windows 10 with these Cherry Trail processors, which basically is adequate but a little laggy. So if you compare this to, let's say, a Chromebook running the Chrome OS, the Chromebook, even with less configuration, less memory and such, is going to operate a little more snappy, but this is certainly adequate. So this is really no different than the others. Weight is about the same, size is about the same. They advertise this as, I think, a 12.5 inch computer, but what they're not telling you is that the display is 11.6, which is about the same as you would see maybe from bezel to bezel. It's 12.5, but who cares about that, right? So it is the same standard sorts of specifications. But the way that these computers differentiate themselves is on the subtleties. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And so let me tell you how I test these computers. I test them out in a very practical way. I actually use them for a couple of weeks. And so I walk every day and I typically write every day. Usually when I carry a cheap computer to the place where I go write, which is Starbucks, and use it in that sort of setting. And I'll use this to post up to WordPress. And so fairly simple task, but I'm using Google Docs. I'm sometimes using spreadsheets. I'm using WordPress. I'm surfing the web. I'm on YouTube. I'm doing all these different things like that most folks would really use. So we know that the operating speed, in other words, how quick and snappy it is going to be similar to, let's say, an HP Stream. Now, this computer was only, I think, $149, and the HP Stream now sells for like $180 or $189. So you're saving a little bit of money, but is it worth it? So again, it's the little subtleties that make the difference. So what are the subtleties about this computer? I've used a lot of these little lightweight computers now, and so I have a pretty good idea of how they differ. Well, you have, again, a similar sized screen, and it's going to be roughly that 720 sort of P type of screen, so not the highest resolution, and a TN type of screen too, so not the highest resolution or not the highest viewing angles, but I would say that this screen appears to be a bit brighter than other models that I've seen, and it tends to be a little sharper too, even though it's spec'd out the same. You also have, of course, a keyboard. Now, generally speaking, this keyboard is okay. I found the key placement just slightly off for me. That could be a personal preference. I also found the keys Not quite as comfortable as, let's say, on an HP computer or on a Dell computer, similarly spec'd out. With that said, adequate, but I ran into one terrible trouble with this computer, and that is the L. This L is so sensitive that the lightest touch of my finger will kind of fire off a bunch of L's. Now, I turned off repetitive keys and all that, and that made it a little bit better. But still, the lightest little tap, if I just rest my little finger on it for a half a second, it's producing letters. And that was absolutely maddening when I was trying to type stuff in, for instance, like Google Docs. It just drove me nuts. The other thing about this is that the trackpad, which is advertised as being very sensitive as a feature, is way too sensitive. And so I was in a situation where I'd be typing something and then all of a sudden the cursor would be up here, then it'd be down there, then I'd be typing in this paragraph, or it was an absolute nightmare. So I found that I was like typing like this, which is maybe a great way to type fast, but I'm not going for any speed contest. So I was touch typing like this, which was really, really stressful. Now, Irulu generally has a 30-day or 60-day return policy. And so I technically could have sent the computer back to fix and maybe get one with a better L, but that wouldn't have solved the trackpad problem. But unfortunately, I bought this in November. I'm testing this in March. So it's my error, but still, the trackpad is not so good. So pretty decent display. Keyboard is adequate, but that L is bad. Trackpad I found not good at all. Speakers I also found were pretty tinny. Now, you're not expecting Bose level quality speakers from a little cheap computer, but a lot of the other ones tend to have a more robust sound and more volume. This was fairly soft, but very, very harsh to the ear. Really no bottom end at all. And I found it unpleasant, although usable. Battery life with this computer is going to be about the same that you're going to see with many computers of this type. So you're roughly going to get anywhere from 7, 8, maybe even 9 hours, depending on what you're doing and how you're doing it. I was tending to get around 7 or 8 hours with my mixed use, but I don't play games, so that might have some impact on the overall amount of time. Oh, and by the way, so you might think, well, just adjust the sensitivity of the trackpad. There is no option to do that with this computer. So you look up the mouse and trackpad drivers, you just get a mouse driver, and I tried downloading additional stuff. I couldn't succeed at that either. So if you do have this computer and you find the trackpad maddening, I would recommend that you turn it off, the trackpad off, and use an external mouse. And that would be the only way that I could really use this computer, because I was literally turning the trackpad off and turning it on when I was trying to edit stuff. So what's the bottom line with this computer? Well, I've bought other Irulu products in the past. A few years ago, I did a review on 2 of their tablets. The larger tablet, this is all really old, so I'm not going to even go into that, but the larger tablet I thought was adequate. The smaller tablet, which was very cheap in those days, I thought was not usable. I would say, for me, this would not be a computer that I would personally use, because the keyboard L, but even if I got the L fixed, then I'd have the problem with the trackpad. So if I only had one computer, if this is all I had, I'd go out and I'd get a mouse and I would make the best of it, and I would learn to type with my hands like this. But it is very, very frustrating to do that. And I think for the very little money more that I would have to spend to get like an HP or a Dell product, or just one of the more, or Acer, or whatever, whoever is making these little books, I think I definitely would do that. I'd get better sound quality to boot. So what's going to happen with this laptop? And why didn't I return it? Well, because I'm past the return date. But what's going to happen to this laptop? I think I'm going to throw it out. So normally I sometimes keep these things. I often will give these little test things away. But I think I would not want to give this away, just because it's so frustrating to type on, and I certainly don't. I'm never going to use it myself again, so I'm not going to keep it. In fact, my normal several week cycle of testing a product really was reduced down to less than 5 days, because I tried it again today to use it to edit a blog post, and it just drove me nuts. So now I know usually when you post a negative review, you get tons of hate. So if you feel a need to hate, I guess go hate. But this is an honest review of what I experienced with this product, and you might have a different experience, and that's really okay. And I think if my L would have worked, I would have been a little bit more tolerant of this product. If the L would have worked, and if I could reduce the sensitivity on the trackpad, I would it would not be my favorite stream book type product, but I at least would recommend it. But with these particular deficits, I just can't in good conscience. Anyways, if you get some time, please give my free podcast a listen. It's on iTunes. It's an audio podcast. It includes myself and my wife. And I also have a blog, drmikekuna.com, drmikekuna.com, which is just kind of a free writing experiment that I'm doing. And if you like this channel, subscribe. Again, if you want to make a positive comment, great. If you want to make a negative comment, great. If you want to make an asinine comment, grow up. And I don't know what else to say. So have a great day.